Hello and welcome to your demonstration on how to start drawing the final draft for the Micrography project. I'm also going to show you how to make a viewfinder. So I'm going to start with that part first. And so if you still have your viewfinder from previous years, this little one, then this fits onto the grid that you received. If you don't have it, then I'm going to take one of the half sheets of drawing paper, and you will need scissors for this. Most of you have some kind of scissors at your house. And you can cut it down, like I have half of it. I'm going to cut it down a little bit further so you have a smaller piece to deal with. And so the opening is a 1/2 inch. So it's a 1/2 inch grid. We want a 1/2 inch opening. On the ruler side, it's the 8th line in. So I will show this to you in a closer view. But I'm going to go from the 0 to the 8th line, which is the 1/2. And I'm just going to move my ruler down and try to line it up. And do 2 lines. Okay. Then from the top of that line, oh, mine was like almost perfectly 1/2 inch. Wow, okay. But if yours wasn't, so let's say your line was like down here, then I would just make a little mark of where it should be for a line. But for me, I was a pretty decent judge of what 1/2 inch. 1/2 inch is on that side. On this side, a little bit lower. Okay, then what I do is I like fold. You're gonna fold this in half. So the box is 1/2 on one side, 1/2 on the other. Make a judgment. Sorry, I'm like kind of looking. Make a judgment. Okay. Then you can clip and then super carefully get your scissors in there. If you have an X-Acto knife at home, you can use an X-Acto knife. Make sure you have something underneath when you're cutting, so you're not cutting on your parents', table. So it's not perfect, but it will help me focus on just one box at a time. So let's say I'm going to do this box. It helps. I'm going to do a halfway mark, halfway, 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 so that you can make some better judgments for proportion. So you're essentially making a piece that can go on top. So that is helpful, especially if you have a complex image. And if you don't, then you're just going to follow the grid, and that's totally fine. So things I would delete out of this image. Let me flip it over so you can see it better. Okay, so all the little fuzzy spines over here, deleting. Some of these, though, I'm going to turn into little tiny triangles so that I can go around them. So I'm going to do like little kind of triangles coming off of these central lines. And so when I'm drawing, I'm probably going to start with the biggest part, or an area that if I mess up, it doesn't really matter to get back into the swing of drawing this way. So maybe I draw over here, but I'm going to start straight up in the middle so I can kind of base everything else off of that. Okay, so I have my horizontal paper. I have labeled all the way around. Mine's horizontal, so it's the letters on the short side, numbers along the bottom and top, and then letters on the other side. You're going to need your pink eraser. Since we have, white paper happening, I recommend you grab a piece of scratch paper, not the newspaper. The newspaper will rub on this paper and get it dirty, but something underneath your hand. So I have like our calendar that I printed out, like an old handout, something that doesn't have a lot of pencil on it underneath your hand. Because in some of these areas, it might actually be the highlights, and we don't want to see like fingerprints, and you don't want a ton of graphite to have to erase later on. Okay, so quick review of grade drawing for those of you that only drew with a grid once last year, and for those of you that haven't had art for like 3 or 4 years. You're going to start by looking at like where does it pass through the line. And so that's on line 6 and 7, and that's in box D. So I find D, okay, line 6 and 7, and it almost touches the top over here. And I'm going to make a mark where it passes through the grid, and it comes like almost half, this is the center part, almost halfway here, a little bit here, a little bit of a guideline, and past halfway. So here's half, a little bit past. Okay, so from there, I can kind of sketch in that central part. Then I'm going to give myself, let me go a little bit darker so you can see that. Okay, so I would not normally draw this dark. So you're looking at how does it pass through the grid, but then overall line quality. So then I can kind of clean up before I move on. So you have less to clean up in the end. All right, then I'm going to do guidelines for the little radiating spine sticking out. So I have this one, it's in 6, D, and E. There's that one. Then I have this one here that comes about in the middle of 7C. Okay, and then the next one lines up almost to the corner of C and D, 7 and 8. All right, then that's just a guideline. So then I would go back and I would actually draw, probably with my viewfinder, what that looks like. How much space do I really see right here? So between the spines, you see like that much space. And that spine kind of has attaches to the contour line here. That comes all the way down along the edge of 6C. And then that curves over. So in the really, really dark parts, you can label. So like over here, I have 3A, and it comes to like here. And, okay, about halfway there. Okay, so this is some of my darkest values. So if I super, super lightly wanted to write a D and a D saying, hey, these are dark values here, then you can. Otherwise, I like to kind of draw like a whole section or area. And so I'm going to draw the contour line first as it passes through. You might need to make more guidelines. So I kind of draw like the whole contour outline. I would go back and do the spines, and then I would go back and value map that. So I have that whole area done. If you want to draw box by box by box, you can. You just need to make sure your lines and your value mapping lines up as it runs through the boxes. So in here, this is when I would start kind of like cleaning up and erasing, looking to see, do I need a value map? Yes. Well, hold on. Yes. And that spine kind of runs over the whole edge right there. It goes into the next one. Kind of clean it up, clean it up, clean it up, and then I value map that. So like along here, it's gonna fade. So if I wanted to super lightly give myself, I only do it on the mediums and darks, but honestly, by looking at the picture, I'm gonna be able to tell this is lighter and this is darker. But if you need to, only the M's and the D's, medium and dark, no other areas. And from the rest of it, you're just gonna have to look at your picture. Eventually, when you're done drawing, you will erase your whole entire grid, and then you'll take your grid off, so then you have picture, picture, and then it's easier to kind of tell where the values are fading. So it'll be a little bit easier in the end. So I feel like if you don't have to label it, then don't. It's extra work anyway, because you have to erase it all. But in the medium and dark areas, you know, you're gonna have a lot of Sharpie covering that part anyway. So again, draw super, super lightly. You wanna draw guidelines on how areas pass through the grid. You're going to want to give yourself guidelines for direction and length, and then work back into the actual shape. And then I would say before you move on from that area, value map it as well. Okay, so over the weekend, this is your homework. To draw your final draft, because by next Wednesday, or next week, you need to be halfway done with like the darks and into the mediums. Or if you have a lot of medium, like done with that value. So pace yourself, plan ahead, listen to some music, set aside some time to actually get everything drawn out. All right, let me know if you have any issues. You can always take a picture and send it to me if you need help. So if you need help, send a picture of your image and your drawing. Good luck.